Piston Fanatic. I'm your host, Dave Dalton, and I'm excited to share my passion and perspective of our Detroit Pistons as we go on this fantastic voyage together. I've been a diehard Piston fan since the days of Dave Bing and Bob Lanier. I've also been the varsity basketball coach of a very successful program in northern Michigan. Well, Piston fans, today we're going to get into Monty's new lineup philosophy, and it's going to be interesting. And is Cade a bust? A lot of people are debating that right now, and what to do about Jaden Ivey. So we're going to dig into that and talk a little bit about trades and lineups and minutes, and let's get started. So there's for the second time, Monty came out and said that he was going to vary his lineups based on how big the other team was. So if they had a couple big guys or something, he was probably going to start Stu, and maybe if they didn't, then, and a lot of teams don't, he would go with a smaller lineup. Well, Monty has kept us guessing, and none of us have been able to predict what he's going to do next. So it's real interesting what could possibly happen Wednesday night. So this is the first time I've done 108, I think, or this is 109th podcast. I've never predicted a Piston win, I don't think, and I'm predicting one for Wednesday. So, I guess if they don't win, 18 in a row. But anyway, I think they got a good chance to win, and the Grizzlies have been struggling a little bit. They are a little bit undersized. They got hurt a lot at the center position. So that's why I think Monty will go smaller, because Steven Adams and Brandon Clark are both out for the year or most of the year. And so, they have Jaren Jackson Jr. in there, but he doesn't rebound. He's the best shot blocker in the NBA, and he's a former Michigan State player, but he can shoot the three, but he doesn't rebound for whatever reason. So anyway, I think that we have a good chance to dominate the boards because we have an excellent rebounding team, especially if we play a sore. So we're going to be talking about that too. So just to begin with, there's all this debate about Zach LaVine and trading for Zach LaVine, and everybody knows, and all the people, the national pundits, they all say, "Oh yeah, Chicago should make that trade. They should get Jaden Ivey." And so I hope not. And here's another thought I had, though. I went through before and showed you that per 36 minutes, Jaden Ivey has been just as good as Zach LaVine this year. It's just he doesn't play as much, but his shooting percentages are as good, and he scores the ball really well, and his assists and rebounds. And I mentioned that he doesn't have knee problems. He makes a lot less money than Zach LaVine, and he doesn't have knee problems, and he's a lot younger. So when we would have him controlled with a lower price tag than Zach LaVine for sure, and he fits our timeline, and he can do a lot of the same things. But here's another one. Instead of trading to get Zach LaVine, we got a guy that just came back last game, Bojan Bogdanovic. He scored 22 points. He only played 27 minutes, and he's a bucket. And is he going to average his numbers are as good or better than LaVine's? So let's think about that. We're going to trade Jaden Ivey and get rid of a potentially great young player and pick up a guy that's as good as Bojan. Well, we got Bojan. So my thing is, you do need 20-point scorers in this league. You need scorers. So here's our thing. We have Cade scoring 22 a game, and all this time, and Duran's been our second leading scorer with only 12. Although we have had a guy sitting on our bench a lot of the year named Jaden Ivey that can score 20 a game or close to it. I mean, I think that he's the other guy that can score. Duran's going to get those points and those dunks and shoot a high percentage, but he can't just create shots. Ivey can create shots. But we'll see that Ivey he's 8th on the team in minutes played, 8th, and he's 8th on the team in shots. And he's talented, and his percentages are great, but he's 3rd on the team in scoring. So add those numbers up, and it doesn't make sense. It seems illogical that you would have a guy that's that talented, that showed, the second half of the year last year, he scored, about 18 or 19 points a game last month or two, and he can get to the rim. His efficiency is way higher than last year at the rim. He's in the 90th percentile in the NBA of finishing at the rim. So we'll see what happens with the lineup on Wednesday. That's just tomorrow. I'm doing this on Tuesday, so it's going to be very interesting. I was going to talk a little bit about minutes. So there's 240 minutes in an NBA game, and that's what's complicated when you start trying to divvy them out, and then it's really hard. We've had all these injuries, and we're trying to bring other guys back into the lineup and into the rotation. And so then what does that do? If you give a minute to somebody, it takes a minute away from somebody else. But my philosophy, my feeling, my take on what minutes that and it wouldn't be every game. Obviously, there's different circumstances every game that you would play one guy more, one guy a little bit less. But I think Cade should play about 34 minutes. It seems to me that he's gotten a little bit tired, and his percentages are, I mentioned it on a prior podcast, are way lower in the fourth quarter. And at part way, it's teams double him harder, which they're not going to be able to do with Bojan, I don't think. And they just blitz him real hard, and then he tries to do it when he's exhausted, and so I think that's hurt his percentages. So Ivey, I think, should play 31 minutes, and he's averaging 23, and that's a huge difference. And plus, he needs to touch the ball. I just would be so excited to see Ivey, Cade, and Bogey out there on the court together, and see, I'd like to see Ivey have the ball in his hands a lot of times, and he'd take it to the rim. Those guys are going to be open for kickouts because teams, a lot of guys they don't have to guard, but they're going to have to help on Ivey, or he's just going to get to the rim. And like you said, he's finishing at one of the highest percentages in the NBA. Next thing is Asur, and I think he needs to play about 28 minutes. So it's between like 25 minutes or 30 minutes, and so that's where 28 minutes falls. And so he needs to develop. We're not going to win this year. He's shown such promise. But playing 13 minutes or 18 minutes, that's ridiculous. And he's a terrible shooter. And Troy, if he's done anything bad, he's not gotten enough good shooters. And again, unfortunately, he did have some shooters. He was confident that he had some shooters. And our best shooters all got injured. Monty Morris and Bojan. And, they got hurt. And Harris is hurt. And so anyway, that's been a real hard thing. So, but we have to get more shooters from here on out. Anybody that we look at and try to get needs to be a shooter. But Asor showed many things that he can do, and I was against drafting him because I knew he couldn't shoot, and I knew he was working hard to shoot. He worked his butt off to be a good shooter. He was in the gym constantly. He had the best training. It was his full-time job. He was at Overtime Elite, and they had this great facilities and these great trainers, and he had such desire and determination, and he put in all the time, and he still can't shoot. He's like 11% on threes. I think that he will develop a decent three-point shot, but he isn't right now, and people don't guard him. But still, why is that different than Killian and Stu? It's because he does things. He does way better. He blocks more shots than Stu. He blocks more shots than anybody on the team, and he rebounds better than anybody on the team except for Duran. He's our second best rebounder. So you play him, and he's 20 years old, and we're trying to develop a young team, and let's see what we have. So I want to win, and there could be a game where you play him less if you think that he is struggling or things aren't going well or another guy's hot, and then maybe you play him maybe 20 minutes one game. But overall, he needs to play like 28 minutes a game and maybe more. That would be a good average for me. And Duran, 31 minutes, he's rock solid unless he's in foul trouble. I know he's been a little bit disappointing with his passing and his turnovers. But his shooting and his rebounding, he's come back to life a little bit since he got injured, and he was slowed down even after he came back for a while. But his passing, he has the ability to be a great passer, but his turnover rate is too high, so he's trying to force some things. I think Stu should play off the bench 25 minutes, and it could be a little bit less, it could be a little bit more, and he could play backup center, he could play backup power forward, and it can depend on the lineup, but he'll come in and give us a charge, and we know he'll give us his best effort. Killian, I know he's been on fire the last two games, and I guess we can judge him off the last two games, and he should play more. But he's 25 minutes, I think he should play at this time. And if he stops shooting terrible like he has in the past, where he's shooting in the teens on threes and in the 20s or low 30s on twos overall, I think then you reduce his minutes. So I think that Bagley should play about 17 minutes. His shooting percentage is real high. If you're going to have a backup, at least he can do one thing. If you can't have a backup that's great at blocking shots, we need guys that can score. And Bagley can score at a high clip. And Burks, I don't know what's the mystery of Burks. What's happened? If he's probably not going to be back next year, but we got to see if we can at least get his trade value up. The problem with our trade value, guys, is that everybody wants to trade Burks and what are we going to get for him? I think our chances are better at trading him and getting a younger player, and than it is to get a draft pick. Nobody's going to give us a first round pick for Burks unless he was packaged together with some other players. So anyway, we're going to talk about, is Cade Cunningham a bust? And some of you people think I have comments about it. Not many. I think a lot of people are still in on Cade. I got another comment. I'm going to read some comments today. I'm going to go through some comments and comment on your comments. So, but I'm wearing today my Chauncey Billups jersey. It's autographed, but it's Mr. Big Shot. I went to every playoff game in 2004 and watched him hit. I missed him shooting the half court shot against the New Jersey Nets. They were the New Jersey Nets at that time. They weren't the Brooklyn Nets. But Pistons were down by like 3, and somebody was at the line to shoot 2 free throws with not much time left. So I thought, it's over. So I had to drive 4 hours home. So I hurried up and we ran out of the arena, and we were in the concourse, and the crowd erupted, and Chauncey hit a half-court shot and tied the game, and they had missed 2 free throws. So anyway, he was an unbelievable player for us, and he was truly some guys get credited for shooting under pressure and in the clutch, but Chauncey really was, and it wasn't just the last second shots; it was the last 5 minutes of games when we were behind or it was close, and he would kind of just play the game along. But he was a bust. He was the 3rd player picked by the Boston Celtics, and they thought they were going to get Duncan, and they got him, and they kept him around. Rick Pitino had him around, and he ended up not hardly getting to play, and he bounced around, and he went to a couple different places, and then we signed him as a free agent, and what a free agent that was. But that was like 5 years into his career at least, and people thought he was a bust. So, there's other players like that, but I don't see how you could say, people think that Cade's a bust. But I'm going to tell you some stats from a player. So here's 2 players, and they're 22 years old, both 22 years old. One's shooting 42%, one's shooting 45% overall. Both players are shooting 35% on threes. One player is shooting 89% on free throws, and the other is shot 74% on free throws. One has 4.4 turnovers per game, and the other has 4.5 turnovers per game. The first player is Cade Cunningham. The second player is Luka Doncic. So when he was 22, he shot 3 points better overall than Cade, same 3-point percentage, way lower on free throw percentage, and he turned it over 1/10 of a turnover more. And Cade's turnovers are coming way down. In the last 5 games, he's had like 1 turnover twice and 2 turnovers once, and one game he did have 4, and then he had that terrible game with the Knicks where he had 7. But his turnover numbers have gone consistently down, and so that's, and we can't, it's real easy to say, just like Killian, he was been on fire for 2 games, and it's way above his percentage normal, and he's trending that way, but you can't say more when it comes to like about 10 games. The other thing I want to say about Cade is his percentages have been really good this year. He had that 3 games where he was 3 for 19, and so his 3-point percentage is 35, which is respectable, but it would be 39% if he took out those 3 games. But I mean, obviously those are part of it, but he has been, in the last bunch of games, he's shooting in the 40s. In the last 5 games or something, he's shooting 43% on threes, I think. And his shot has greatly improved. And James Edwards III wrote a great article in the Athletic and talked about this. And it's interesting because I saw this and I was aware of a lot of this stuff that was happening. So it bothered me. Cade's shot his rookie year and his second year was flat. And it bothered me. I just wanted to, I loved him and I loved the Pistons, and I wanted to find somebody that I could tell that, that can do something about it. And, obviously I didn't have any connections. I don't have any, ins to do that. I don't get to go to practice like the beat writers do. And not that anybody would listen to an old high school coach anyway, but that was my thing probably that I did better than a lot of the other coaches was teach shooting. And I had a lot of shooters go on to be really successful in high school and in college. But anyway, I just saw his follow-through went out instead of up. And so I'm seeing this, and I go to the open practice his second year, and I see this arm, and I take pictures of him shooting with his arm out, and I sent it to Coach Beeline, the great John Beeline, Hall of Fame coach, former University of Michigan coach, and he was the senior advisor for player development for the Detroit Pistons. And I sent this picture of him with Cade and showing his follow through. And John Beeline said, "I'm going to show Cade that tomorrow." And he said, we've been working on that. He said, that's been the struggle. And part of it was Cade's arm. And John Beeline told me that his shoulder wouldn't go up. So when you're lifting your arm up to follow through high, his shoulder, they had to retrain it. They even did physical therapy on him to do it. But also, so he got that shin injury. So he said he went to the NBA and the line was longer and he wasn't using his legs enough. Well, another thing that terrible happened with Cade his rookie year is he got injured. He hurt his ankle, missed all the training camp, missed all the preseason, and missed a bunch of the first games. And then all of a sudden he's jumping in to the NBA for the first time. And he missed 21 out of his first 22 threes. And so that really hurt his percentage that year. But anyway, it was an adjustment because the NBA line is a lot further than the college line, but he said he didn't use his legs enough. But anyway, so he gets injured. He has surgery on his shin, and when he starts doing a little bit better, he sits at a trainer's table and gets on a cushion, and he practices shooting. And he's practicing lifting that arm up and following through high, and he did that all the time. And then finally got better, and so he finally got to shoot a little bit on his feet, and they did it gradually. And so at first he would do partway on standing on his feet one day or 2 days, and then the next day he would go back onto the training table and shoot. And he shot 30,000 shots. He shot between January and training camp, and they charted him. And so, he just got a lot better, and his shot is better. And I said it before the season. I was confident last spring when this was all going on, and I got in touch with Coach Beeline, and so it's a real thing. Another thing I wanted to say about Ivy, I heard another great podcast is JJ Redick, and he has the old man and the three, and he interviews players, but he also talks a lot about stuff. He's on ESPN announcing games too, but he is very good, and he's a great interviewer. But he talked to Cam Thomas. So Cam Thomas is this guy that plays for Brooklyn, and he didn't hardly get to play. And he was a gunner in college, but he was a big-time scorer in AAU, big-time, averaged 23 in college at LSU. And hardly college players hardly average over 20. But this guy, at the end of last year, they went through those trades for Durant, and they had Kyrie was sitting out, and Harden. I don't know if they had traded him to Philadelphia or not yet, but they had nobody, and so he got to go in there, and they were waiting for Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson to come over from Phoenix to complete that trade, but they weren't there yet. So he had 3 games where he scored in the 40s, and this guy that was hardly ever used, he maybe averaged 7 a game, and didn't play very many minutes, but he was a walking bucket. And this year he's averaging 26 points a game, 46% from the field, 34% on threes, 84 on free throws, and 26 points a game. This guy that couldn't get any minutes on the court, but the key point I want to talk about that is he's talking to JJ, and they're saying about how hard it was and to sit on the bench all the time and not know if you're going to get to play. And then sometimes you're even told that that you might get to play tonight. This looks like a night that you might get to play, and then you don't, or then you're all amped up and you think you're going to play in the first half, and then you don't get in it at all, and then all of a sudden in the second half you get in. Anyway, this is what I've been trying to talk about, the struggle. I had one of my readers comment that, Ivy's just got to suck it up, and when he gets a chance, do it. But people are human, obviously, and it is way easier said than done to not know if you're going to play. Like I said, he's gone on this roller coaster ride where he doesn't start, doesn't think the coach believes in him, thinks the coach is, any mistake he makes defensively or offensively might mean that he's back on the bench, and then he finally gets to start. Things go really good, and then he gets benched again, and now he's playing again. They're having the 3-guard rotation, but he's still hardly touching the ball, compared to what he needs to be. He needs to be treated like he's one of our prime players. But it's a long season. We got it's a quarter of the way through, so it's not as long now, but we still really got to look at what's going to happen between now and the end of the year, and I think that's going to be a huge impact. I mean, I think everybody wants to fire everybody, and everybody wants to make the big trade, and everybody's all upset, and I understand that, but it's not going to happen. All these trades that people are proposing, everybody talks about the big trade deadline. So anybody that was signed last year by their own team or as a free agent, they are not eligible until December 15th, which is right around the corner here. So everybody thinks, and people on podcasts talk about how that's a big date, and it's like kind of a trade deadline, just like there is in February, but it's not. It's the last 2 years, there were no trades made in the month of December. So for any of you that think we're going to hurry up and make a trade so we can win a game, it could happen. It certainly could happen, but it probably won't. I'm sure there easily could be some moves made in December this year, but it's just something that's not very common. That's all I want to say about that. But a couple little tidbits. The Pistons are second in the NBA in dunks, so that's a cool thing. And Duran, man, he was hammering it the last game. He drove right around Jarrett Allen and hammered it. And another thing I just want to point out about Stu's turnovers. And so, and then tomorrow night when you're watching the game, I want you to watch where the defenders are when Stu catches the ball. And even when he's off the ball, watch where his man is. When Killian's off the ball, watch where his man is. When Killian's driving and dribbling the ball towards the basket, watch how far his man is backing off him. I mean, every team does it different. Maybe the Grizzlies won't do it, but most people are just laying way off, both of them. But Stewart's turnovers, he's made, again, Duran and Asar are just as guilty as Stu of making too many turnovers per time for the percentage of times that they touch the ball. But a majority of his come off when he tries to put the ball on the floor. So that's what I'm saying. We've tried to make him a power forward, to play on the perimeter, to shoot the three, which he's reluctant. And when he puts the ball on the floor, I mean, I think it's in his head even a little bit. I don't think he's as bad as he's shown lately, but he turns it over a really high percentage of the times that he puts it on the floor. But another cool thing was Flint Beecher retired Monty Morris's jersey. I drive by there quite often, but the coolest thing was that everybody on the team went, and this team is a team that's together. Monty's made comments about that. Another thing about Killian is you need to start thinking about, he's a star player now for some of you, and how much are we going to pay him? He's a restricted free agent. I guess somebody else might offer him a lot. If he was smart, he would sign with Detroit because Monty loves him, and I'm not sure he'll go anywhere else in the league that he'll be as loved as much. But what do you think we should pay him? What do you think Troy should give him a contract for? Somebody made a comment on my comment section and said we should pay him $9.9 million a year for, I don't know if they said 2 or 3 years, but my thing would be 2 years and third-year team option for maybe $9 million. So that was a reasonable proposal by that person. He could end up being a solid backup guard. There's a good chance we're going to lose Harris and maybe Monty Morris and probably Burks. Who knows if we could ever trade Bogey? So there could be some room, and we do have Sasser he can be the backup 1 or 2. He's both. Problem with Sasser is, when I mentioned those minutes, I didn't mention Sasser, and it's hard because there's only 240 minutes to go, and guys need to play enough that they can get in a rhythm. And so if you're playing a whole bunch of guys like 8 minutes or 14 minutes or something, then they don't really get in a rhythm. But people need a little bit of consistency. But Monty does need to experiment and see what's going on. But big thing is, we got trades coming up. People are wanting to do trades, and free agency, but we need to prioritize shooting. We are a bad shooting team. We're 29th in 3 points attempted and 29th in 3 points made. 3 points made. So we need to get guys that can shoot better, and Bojan is going to make a huge difference in that. He had this great game. He scored 22 points, but he was only 3 for 10. The hard thing about threes is when you're 3 for 10, you're just okay. maybe. And if you do 4 for 10, you're great. So, I have a granddaughter that's a great 3-point shooter, and I always try to point that out that, you just one more three and you go from okay to great if you make one more. So, but we have to look at, everybody's in hindsight, everybody's criticizing Troy. He has not done a perfect job. I think Troy gets too impassioned about certain players, and he leads with his heart more than his head sometimes. And I think it's important to have a big heart and to care about, want players, and like, all those players that went to Monty Morris's jersey retirement, that he's got good guys and they're like sticking together, but you can't prioritize good guys. You don't want to get any bad guys for sure, but to feel like everybody feels this pressure that we have to play Stu because he's such a great guy and he's a leader and whatever, and he loves Stu. And I'm going to tell you, he drafted Stu because, and I don't remember specifically the story now. I should have looked it up somehow. I don't know if I could, but he was great friends with maybe the head coach at Washington where Stu played. And so there's a reason, and that's still handcuffing us. We can't make the trade that we would want to make because we can't trade a first-round draft pick because it can't convey because we traded for this pick for Stu. And if we wouldn't have done that, we could trade a first-round pick every other year if we wanted to. Maybe that's a blessing that we didn't. So, but we've had all these injuries, and especially Bogey, and then we've had Duran's been hurt and not the same, and Ivy got sick for a while, and let's just see. My other prediction besides the win against the Grizzlies Wednesday is that the month of January we are going to play real well, and that we're going to win some games in the month of January, between January 2nd and February 2nd. Just, you can call me out on it. Remember this podcast. So, people talked about trading for Patrick Williams. I would do that. I would never trade Ivy for him. He was really a hot commodity, but he can shoot 40% on threes. He's only 6'7", but they don't start him now, and he's like in the doghouse. Their fans and everybody's kind of turned on him, and so if we can get him low for a low price, we need more than one. We need more than one power forward. So I said last episode and other episodes, we need to prioritize spending whatever it takes. So like if we want OG Anunoby, if you think he's the guy, he's 6'7", he shoots 46% from the floor, 40% on threes. He's at all 14 points a game. He's an all defensive guy. He can make, I don't know if he made first or second all defense last year, but he is a great defender. That's what we need. And maybe it's not him, but I'd even rather like a guy that's 6'8", 6'9", 6'10", but there's not that many of them. So, obviously we could, everybody talks about getting Lauri Markkanen, and Danny Ainge is going to want everything in the world. So I just don't think that we would be able to get him, although I would love to have him. He would be perfect to plug him into our lineup. But, even DeAndre Hunter. So DeAndre Hunter is quite young. He's got a good contract. His contract is descending. So he's making more this year. He's making less the next 2 or 3 years. And so that's a good contract, because when our young guys start needing to be get their rookie extensions, then his money is going to be lower. So anyway, like I said, we need 2 or 3, the guys that can play the 3 and the 4. We need some of those guys. So we need 2 of them, not just one. I would like to see us get one really outstanding guy, and again, we would have to overpay, but I would. So anyway, let's get started with some of our comments. Again, I can't read everyone. I'd love to, and I'm just going to go in order of where they fall, so I'm not singling out because I liked his better than yours or hers better than yours. But this is Bruce said, even though this is 17 straight, I like what I saw today. Having Bogey on the floor really seemed to limit Cade's turnovers by opening up the paint for him to make his passes. His vision was really on full display tonight. Spacing is clearly the key. I think Monty realized that, and I was happy to see Stu was benched in the fourth quarter. Overall, all right game. I enjoyed the watch, which is a great change of pace compared to most of this year. Thanks for the content, Coach. So, thank you, Bruce. And I agree with what Bruce said, and having Bogey is going to make a huge difference, and I think it's going to be even better as we go. But it is perplexing. We have no idea the players have no idea what Monty's going to do. And, like I said, we get knocks off the street, throws him, gets to play a bunch, then all of a sudden he's in the starting lineup 2 games later, and then all of a sudden he's on the bench not getting to play at all. And, what does that make guys like Ivy think when I'm 8th on the team in minutes played? So, but I agree with what he said, and he had Stu on the bench in the fourth quarter. We'll see how things unravel tonight, and I still think that it's not best. It'd be better with another shooter, but I want Cade and Ivy and Bojan to play together. And if Ivy drives and kicks to Cade, Cade's numbers are going way up, catch and shoot threes, and obviously Bogey's a great shooter, and so we'll see. I mean, I think it's real good to have Ivy on the floor if you're going to play the smaller lineup. I'm not Ivy, excuse me, Asar, because Asar is a crazy rebounder, the best rebounder for his size in the league, and he can. If you're going to have a guy like Bojan, who's not a great rebounder out there, then you want your other forward to be someone that can rebound and play defense. So that's why I think that it works, because you have a weaker defender in Bogey, and then you put in Asar on the tougher, better player, and I think it's good. It's not greatest for spacing, and it's good to see it. Duran is a great rebounder too, and see him and Cade do the pick and roll would be great with the spacing with Ivy and Bojan out there to catch and shoot if Cade's doing the pick and roll with Stewart. So next one says, I think the 3-guard lineup really helps Cade. He seemed like a much easier time, and all of his numbers look better. I also like Asar off the bench, at least in the early in his career, similar to how the Pistons used Rodman. Bring him to lock down on the second unit or in special situations, and slow down star players if needed. So that's a good comment. I mean, I was there for the Rodman experience, and I loved him when he came out when he was young. And I just like I comment right now about playing Ivy more. Back then, I had no podcast, but I was adamant about Rodman needs to play more. He was rebounding the crap out of the ball. He shut down people just like Asar. Asar actually has more offensive talent than what Rodman does, but shooting wasn't as big a deal back then. People didn't make you pay as bad for being a non-shooter, but Rodman could guard the best players on the other team, and he could rebound the crap out of the ball just like Asar. So that is a good comparison, but I like him starting because, like I said, because I think that gives you, if you're going to go the smaller lineup, it gives you an elite rebounder, an elite defender to play along with Bojan. So, but you can still mix it up. And again, I think a real priority's got to be staggering. I think that I want Cade or Ivy on the floor all the time, or Bojan, or two of the three as much as possible. And we haven't really done that. A lot of times we sub 5 for 5, and then all of a sudden, especially when we didn't have Bojan back, and we got Ivy and Cade both sitting on the bench, and we have nobody that can create their own shot or shot for others. So we'll see what happens with that tonight or tomorrow night. This is Eduardo. He said, what really hurts my eyes is the fact that we are terrible at the perimeter D. Every time we let players wide open to shoot threes. On the other hand, our players hesitate when they're open and caught because they can't shoot. At least our starters played well today, but our bench took us down. So that's true. That's exactly what happened. But sometimes this year, our starters have been terrible and our bench has done better. We're all so hyped about the new starting lineup with Cade and Ivy and at the Knicks and Killian. We scored 17 points in the first quarter. So everybody thinks that new great lineup with those 3 guards was so magic. And of course, we didn't do. And Cade scored 9 of the 17 when he was out there. So. It is real hard. We do have to be patient. People do have to evaluate things. Monty has the best chance to evaluate. He sees the guys every day in practice. He sees every game. He's got film breakdowns. He's got assistant coaches. But we have to see how things happen over a period of time. You can't judge by, again, 2 games or 3 games or 4 games. You got to see how things play out, and we got to see what does it look like. It's been unfortunate that we didn't have Bogey. And again, Bogey is not in our future. I mean, I think he's great to have this year. If we get a good trade offer, I'm trading him. But we'll see. But I think that the longest we would have him is next year. I would think so. And this is D Dubs. He is great. He always is commenting. I appreciate him. He says winning cures everything, and ain't that the truth? And losing reveals everything. Once we figure out things, then we'll get flowing. But it's a tough period that we're going through right now. So we need to just stick together and keep supporting each other and do it for the Detroit Pistons history and culture. So I don't know how much we impact their culture, but I do know that people are certainly have every right to be overreacting to 4 terrible years, and then the worst of all this year when we thought for sure, and I thought we were going to win 32 games. I'm not going to lie to you, but I could see how it would happen if you took out Bogey and Morris. I thought I counted them in there. I thought they were going to be playing, and those two guys would make a huge difference in every way. And we do need veterans, and we're playing again the youngest lineup around. So yeah, I think that we do have to have some patience, and I know but I understand why you're out of patience. So this is from Arc 7. It's a few takes from this game. So he's talking about the Cavaliers game first. This game was lost as soon as Cade subbed out in the third, and that's a real thing. I think they went on like a 15-0 run. The bench immediately let a 9-point lead evaporate, and it was painful watching the bench. Second, Stu needs to come off the bench. He's an energy guy, not a starting big on any serious NBA team. And that's exactly how I feel. So we share that. Again, we don't have to agree with everything. You can disagree. Nobody knows for sure. Again, things have to play out. But even if things play out, we still don't know. We don't know how good Ivy is. A lot of people think he's a bust. But he's playing 23 minutes a game. He doesn't get to touch the ball a lot. He's playing with different weird lineups. And he has to feel that he has a coach that doesn't believe in him. And he doesn't know, am I going to sit there like I told you with Cam Thomas? Cam Thomas said that on the J.J. Redick podcast, that it was terrible because I didn't know what was going to happen. It was so frustrating. J.J. agreed with him early in his career that he experienced the same thing. So, yeah, that's a real thing. We just have to see what Monty's going to do. But I agree with him. Everything about Stu coming off the bench and being an energy guy, and that he wouldn't be starting big on any serious NBA team. He's also a complete liability if you're not making threes, and he struggled lately. So, third, Monty needs to find a lineup and stick with it. So, it's true to a point. We still do need to experiment. We still need to evaluate. We still can vary the lineup a little bit, but nothing like this roller coaster ride or the teeter-totter. When I was a kid, we had these teeter-totters. You're up and you're down. You're up, and nobody knows. So I think consistency is important, but I still think you can't be afraid to try things, especially if things are going wrong. But Monty needs, which should be this hard, which should not be this hard, considering some of these guys should not be playing at all. Lastly, congrats on the 1,000 coach. So very cool. Thank you. Subscribe. I forgot to say that. Please subscribe. Got over 1,000 subscribers, but it's really cool. So this next one's from Gabe, and it says, I'm so sick of this Cade'S a bust nonsense I hear from Piston fans. The season is obviously troubled across the whole team, and Cade'S is working with very limited lineup, especially when you pair it with Monty's questionable coaching. Despite this all, Cade'S putting up pretty good numbers other than turnovers, which again I made mention that they're drastically going down. But we'll see. It remains to be seen. People need to relax and be patient. He can be our guy for a long time, but it starts with to feel unwanted, he will leave. And I would be so disappointed. So would I. I'll be at the Memphis game. Hopefully we win and people can relax. Go Pistons. So Gabe, I'm with you. I hope, like I said, I'm predicting a win for you for being at the game. So that would be fun if you got to be at the game and watch that happen. But the Cade'S bus thing, is just an interesting thing that, people, when things go wrong, people, I think, overreact. That it is true. You have a right to feel that way because his percentages have been not high enough, and his turnovers have been way too high. So you're justified. But I'm going to tell you, especially this year, more than even the other 2 years, which he didn't hardly play at all last year. But he is getting blitzed more than like almost anybody in the NBA. He's getting double teamed. People are sagging in the paint. They're even playing. It even affects him because people are dropping guys behind Duran so that he can't lob it to Duran. He did the last game when Bogey played, so we'll see how that goes. But that's a huge part in everything there. So here's another one from One Time Only. Great job, coach. Best coverage around because you're honest. All mainstream scared to criticize Monty when it's clearly his fault. We got the players. Troy did his job. He wanted Ali to coach. Our owner is to blame for his jumping the gun, virtue signaling to a coach who clearly didn't deserve the contract. I want to hear all the Cade haters in the last quarter of the season when he's dropping 30 a night efficiently. This man missed a whole season of basketball. It takes a while to get back to NBA level. I hope Monty kills his ego and turns the season around. So there's still hope. We'll just see about the lineups again. Monty knows a lot, and I listened to some people from Phoenix, and they said that he's really slow to adapt and to see and figure things out, and that he's a great person, and he's got great connections with people, but he's still slow to figure things out. And so hopefully he figures some things out. Because I'm going to tell you, I'm not a genius. I don't know. He obviously, if I knew as much as Monty, I would be making $13 million, and he would be sitting here doing a podcast probably. But I think that it's just challenging because some things seem obvious to so many of us, so many of my listeners, and so many people in the national media. I mean, it's just interesting when so many people think that Ivy should play, and so many people think that Stu shouldn't play as much. And it's just when there's that many people, high of a percentage, it just intrigues me. So here's another guy. I mentioned Bill Simmons last podcast. He said, good to hear a Piston fan give props to Bill Simmons. His encyclopedia memory of the NBA is amazing. Again, listen to his podcast. He knows everything about every player, every detail about every player for like 50 years. And he is entertaining. And again, I don't agree with everything he says. So here's my guy. The keys to wisdom. And again, he's a wise guy. I appreciate him. It was great to see Bogey back. We got to fire him up, and then trade him out to the highest bidder. I think it will be best to keep him at the three as much as possible and away from battling the other big guys. So when he got hurt last year, I was freaking out, and because I wanted to trade him so bad because I thought he had a lot of value. Now, because of this injury, he's obviously not people when they come to Troy to ask about a trade. They're going to say, well, he's injured, and they're going to want to give less. So what Keys to Wisdom is saying is that we got to keep him healthy, keep him away from those big guys, and keep him healthy until whenever it is in the trade deadline. I would love to see him play through the month of January, so my prediction can be right about us winning games, and then trade him and get some kind of asset. When we trade, we don't want a bunch of first-round picks. We get a bunch of first-round picks, then they're too young. I do want the first-round pick from this next year, but we'll see what happens there. But he said Cade looked really good the last two games without Asar, with Livers and Bogey back. Now we have some better options to play with Cade and Asar than Asar. The last two games have been much better shooting lineups than we played all year previously. That will pay off for Cade and the team in time. During this, looking like close to being back to his top form. Health is the only thing that is going to slow him down. So hopefully he is past all that now, and I agree with that. He said Killian is playing good too. Well, I don't think all that much of him. He does look like he is more comfortable this year than prior years. The way this is going, I expect they will keep him and extend him. This is the guy I talked about. Extend him for $9.9 million qualifying offer. That's his qualifying offer. Perhaps they even work out a 2 or 3 year deal around that price or a little bit lower. 3 years for $24 million, he suggests, and that sounds real good, especially if the third year's a team option. Maybe 4 years at $32 million. But anyway, coach and GM love him, so maybe they even get him inked during the season. If he keeps playing efficiently, Cade also seems to like him. So, and he has a lot more to say. I just don't want to take too long on my podcast. I know that people have other things to do, but thank you for listening, and I hope to have more time. I need to do a podcast where I just do comments, but I love my listeners. Please subscribe. Be the reason somebody feels loved and cared for. Go Pistons! Let's beat the Grizzlies and end the streak.